Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Cat West. The case of Cat West, Cat Dawn West. Martin was born on February 15, 1975 in Davie, Florida. She grew up as an only child in a humble and modest family environment with parents Nancy and John Jonathan Martin. As a child, Cat longed for a sibling, but her mother's health issues prevented that from happening. Instead, she became extremely attached to dolls, treating them like they were alive, singing to them, and carrying them around in school. Cat was known for her beauty and outgoing personality, actively participating in sports and dance. However, during her teenage years, she began to show signs of bipolar disorder, which included depression and anxiety, followed by periods of extreme happiness and restlessness. Unfortunately, her parents didn't realize what was happening until later. By that time, Cat had started using alcohol to cope with her emotions. It wasn't until she received treatment for alcoholism that the underlying cause of her problems was discovered. In her 20s, Cat overcame her addiction to alcohol, but managing her bipolar disorder was more difficult. She had to take several strong medications that interacted with each other and caused side effects. Eventually, her disorder was brought under control, but she had to continue taking medication for the rest of her life. Sadly, her life was cut short. Cat dreamed of a traditional life with a husband, children, and a family, but her personal struggles with a psychological disorder and alcohol issues made it challenging. Despite these difficulties, she was a popular and lively person who loved being the center of attention. Cat had aspirations to become a model and would attend castings, trying out different looks. Her idol was Marilyn Monroe, whom she admired greatly. She watched Monroe's movies repeatedly, collected posters, and imitated her style and image. Interestingly, Cat bore a resemblance to Monroe, which she happily exploited and treasured. Although Cat never became a famous model, her photos regularly appeared in local magazines, earning her some recognition and a small following. People would occasionally recognize her on the streets of her hometown. At the age of 28, she finally met the man she would start a family with, William West. William Jeffrey West, who goes by his middle name Jeffrey, was born in 1970 in Alabama, where he grew up in an ordinary family. As a child, Jeffrey envisioned a future in the military or law enforcement. He was an excellent student, enthusiastic about sports, and physically fit. In the early 1990s, Jeffrey enlisted in the U.S. military, starting as a military police officer. His commitment led him to become a recruiter, responsible for recruiting new members into the Army and Navy. He eventually became the head of a recruitment division. Throughout his life, Jeffrey dedicated 20 years to serving in the military. William balanced his military career with higher education, earning a bachelor's degree in public relations from the University of South Carolina, and later a master's degree in criminal justice and disaster and emergency management. He was intelligent, composed, and goal-oriented, yet modest and somewhat introverted, preferring quiet gatherings to loud parties and shunning the spotlight. After marrying young, he became a devoted family man and responsible parent to 2 children. After retiring from the military, William joined the police department of a university town as a corporal, tasked with ensuring campus safety. He took his duties seriously and responsibly, although he never had to use his issued service firearm throughout his career. Cat and Jeffrey, an unlikely couple, met in the mid-2000s. At the time, Jeffrey was still serving in the military and married to his first wife. Despite their differences, Jeffrey being a stern, quiet military man, and Cat being a flamboyant, bold attention seeker, they felt an instant attraction. Their differences, including their 5-year age gap, Jeffrey's existing marriage, and Cat's struggles with alcoholism, did not deter their relationship. Jeffrey filed for divorce shortly after meeting Cat, and in a whirlwind romance, they got married in a Las Vegas chapel just 5 months later in 2005. They had a daughter, Lola, and settled in Sarah, Alabama, Jeffrey's hometown, in a cozy custom-built home designed by Cat herself. The bedroom was a shrine to her idol, Marilyn Monroe, with numerous portraits adorning the walls. Despite their vastly different personalities, the Wests were known to their neighbors as a happy couple. Kat, who preferred to be called Caitlin, was a fashionista who reveled in attention. She took great care in her appearance, always donning bold makeup, stylish hair, and fashionable outfits that drew admiration. She beamed with joy, perpetually smiling, and thrived on compliments. In stark contrast, Jeffrey appeared reserved, serious, and disciplined, traits likely shaped by his lengthy military career, and often seemed overshadowed by Kat's vibrant personality. Kat struggled to succeed as a model after getting married and having a daughter. Instead, she focused on being a homemaker, but she felt unfulfilled and craved attention. With the rise of social media, Kat started posting photos online, initially harmless pictures inspired by Barbie and Marilyn Monroe. Over time, her posts became more provocative. Sources close to the couple say that Kat's husband didn't object to her new hobby and even helped her by taking photos. This turned into a profitable venture for Kat through paid subscriptions. The couple was seen buying seafood dishes, fine wine, and candles to set a romantic mood, captured on surveillance cameras. They appeared happy and carefree, joking and smiling, with no sign of the tragedy to come. After dinner, Kat, who had previously struggled with alcohol dependence, became her online persona, Kitty Cat, under the influence of the drinks. She asked her husband Jeff to take sultry photos, first in lingerie and then nude. Jeff agreed and took several revealing shots which were posted on Kat's private profile for fans only. By around 1 p.m., what was supposed to be a romantic evening escalated into a tragic nightmare. The next morning, January 13th, around 5 a.m., a young neighbor of the Wests headed to work. Although the sun hadn't risen, it was light enough outside for her to notice something unusual as she passed the Wests' house. At first, she wasn't sure what she was seeing, but as she slowed down, she realized with horror that an almost fully naked woman was lying motionless on the road. A woman witnessed someone standing on the doorstep of a house, but they vanished when they saw her. She couldn't determine if they entered the house or fled down the street. She was startled and uncertain, so she didn't approach the body right away. Instead, she went home, informed her parents, and together they called emergency services to report their discovery. At the operator's request, the family returned to the scene and examined the body. They identified it as Mrs. West, but unfortunately there was no pulse. Her body was cold, and rigor mortis had set in. Mrs. West's body lay face down on the sidewalk, wearing only a pink bra top. A blood-stained pool had formed beneath her head, and a bottle of absinthe with bloodstains was nearby. Her damaged smartphone lay a short distance away. Since the area was quiet and residential, there were no other witnesses that night. This left a mystery about what happened between 8:30 p.m., when the West's car was last seen, and 5 a.m., when the body was discovered. The only person who might know what happened is Mr. West, but is he hiding something? Detective Michael Melhoff was one of the first to arrive at the scene of the crime. He went to the house where her body was found and spoke to the man who answered the door. The man appeared anxious but claimed he didn't know what was going on. When the detective asked him where his wife was, the man said he had just woken up and couldn't find her in bed. The detective then asked the man to step outside, where he told him that her body had been found nearby, identified by neighbors as Kat West. The man put on a jacket and followed the detective, confirming that the body was indeed his wife. However, his reaction was surprisingly calm. He didn't rush to the body or show any signs of distress. When questioned about his actions the previous night, the man said he had slept soundly after a night of drinking. When asked what he thought might have happened to his wife, he simply shrugged and suggested it could have been an accident. The man also mentioned that his wife had bipolar disorder and struggled with alcoholism, which sometimes led to erratic behavior. He said that she would occasionally use their backyard trampoline, sometimes injuring herself when she missed it. A search of the house found no signs of a struggle or violence, but it did reveal evidence of a night of drinking, with 2 plates of leftover food, 2 glasses, and a half-empty brandy bottle on the kitchen table. The police found Jeffrey's wife's high heels under the table and her matching underwear on the floor, but some suspicious items caught their attention. Blood-stained napkins in the trash and an open bottle of cleaner. Jeffrey was arrested as the main suspect that day. He told investigators that he and his wife Kat had a tumultuous evening. After a photo shoot, Jeffrey wanted to move to the bedroom for a more intimate setting. He left to take a shower and returned to find Kat still sitting at the table, drinking straight from the bottle and texting on her phone. This infuriated Jeffrey, and he asked her to put the phone away, but she refused. When he tried to take it from her, they had a small struggle, during which he accidentally elbowed her face, causing a few drops of blood to appear from her nose. Jeffrey claimed that this was the blood the police found on the napkins. He said he eventually took the phone from Kat and threw it out the door into the darkness. Then, he went to bed, thinking Kat would soon calm down and join him. He allegedly had no idea what happened next until the police knocked on his door, asking about Kat. Mr. West proposed several theories to explain his wife's disappearance and death. One possibility was that she went outside to find her phone, taking the absinthe bottle with her to finish it. In this scenario, she might have fallen, hit her head on the bottle, lost consciousness, and frozen to death. Alternatively, someone might have attacked her. Mr. West also found it puzzling that his wife was not wearing the bottom part of her pink lingerie set, and that she had gone outside in just a bra, without putting on any outerwear that was readily available near the entrance. He attributed these unusual actions to her being intoxicated from alcohol. The suspect's story raised suspicions due to its inconsistencies and suspicious omissions. He claimed to be too drunk to recall certain details, leaving investigators to reconstruct the sequence of events. Although there were no witnesses, the evidence suggested that the 42-year-old woman died from a blow to the head, likely caused by the absinthe bottle found nearby, which was compounded by hypothermia. The autopsy revealed that the victim's blood alcohol level was extremely high, indicating severe intoxication that would have impaired her coordination and increased her risk of losing consciousness. At first, the evidence seemed to support a simple explanation. The heavily intoxicated victim had gone outside to look for her phone, taking the unfinished bottle of absinthe with her. She likely lost her balance, fell, hit her head on the bottle, lost consciousness, and died from her injuries and exposure. However, the investigation found this scenario too convenient and suspiciously staged. Although the bottle with blood traces was found next to the victim's head and her smartphone was nearby, forensic analysis cast doubt on the idea that she had fallen and hit her head by herself. If that were the case, the bottle would likely have rolled away from her head, not remained alongside it. Kat's and her husband Jeff's fingerprints were found on a bottle, along with some unidentifiable smudged prints. The presence of blood-stained napkins and an opened bottle of household cleaner in the house led investigators to conclude that the couple had a violent argument. According to the theory presented in court, Kat's obsession with her online subscribers sparked the fight. In a fit of rage, Jeff allegedly struck Kat with the bottle, causing a fatal injury. Panicked, he attempted to make it look like an accidental fall by cleaning up the blood, but he failed to dispose of the evidence. The fitness app on Jeff's phone supported this theory, as it showed he was active in the house until midnight and again early in the morning before the police arrived, contradicting his claim of being asleep. The police believed Jeff was trying to conceal evidence during these periods. A neighbor who discovered Kat's body remembered seeing a male figure on the doorstep who quickly left in an unknown direction in the early morning darkness. However, she couldn't confirm whether it was Jeff or someone else, nor could she say whether the person entered the house or not. The investigators were intrigued by the online presence of the deceased, who had many male admirers paying to see her revealing photos as Kitty Cat. This led them to consider the possibility of an obsessed follower among her subscribers, someone who might have tried to track her down for a personal encounter. The victim, a middle-aged homemaker, regularly received messages from men, some of which were inappropriate. However, she kept her distance, and there were no explicit threats or harassment. A few persistent fans from other states with solid alibis were quickly cleared as suspects. Despite this, mysterious footprints were found on the doorstep that didn't belong to the homeowners, but they vanished on the lawn, leaving their origin unknown. Jeffrey West's neighbors, friends, and family described the couple as happy and content, with Jeffrey aware of his wife Kat's online activities, which he viewed as harmless. However, their social circle was unaware of Kat's online persona, Kitty Cat, just as most of her followers didn't know her real identity. When asked if he had ever been violent towards Kat, Jeffrey denied it, saying he loved her too much to harm her. Despite this, the couple frequently argued, including a heated exchange on January 12th, in which Kat questioned their compatibility due to their differing personalities. Although Jeffrey remained the prime suspect based on forensic evidence and circumstantial details, his family, including his parents, daughter, and in-laws, were convinced of his innocence, adamant that he could never harm Kat. Jeffrey West was arrested and unable to post the $500,000 bail, so he remained in custody for nearly 3 years until his trial. During this time, he was offered a plea deal, which would have reduced his sentence if he admitted to killing his wife. However, he refused the deal, maintaining his innocence. The trial, which began in November 2020, received significant media attention due to Kat's online fame. This publicity put a lot of pressure on the judges and jurors. By this point, the possibility of someone else being involved in Kat's death was no longer considered. The prosecution argued that all the evidence pointed to Jeffrey West as the killer. They believed that in a fit of jealousy, and while under the influence of alcohol, he hit his wife with a bottle, causing fatal injuries. In a panic, they suggested that he then staged the scene to look like an accident and removed evidence from the house. Jeffrey's defense team, on the other hand, argued that Kat's death was indeed an accident. They cited her extremely high blood alcohol levels, which they believed affected her balance and coordination. Kat's mother gave a heartfelt testimony in support of her son-in-law, describing her daughter as eccentric, but emphasizing that Jeffrey loved her deeply and would never harm her. She also asked the court to consider the well-being of their granddaughter, Lola, who had already lost her mother and now risked losing her father as well. After deliberating, the jury delivered a guilty verdict for involuntary manslaughter on January 11, 2021. Jeffrey received the maximum sentence of 13 years, including time served. It's worth noting that if he had accepted the initial plea deal, he might have already been released from prison. The case of Alana Frick. Alana Christine Frick was born in September 1977 in Windsor, Ontario, Canada, to Croatian immigrants, George and Anafi. She was the younger of 2 daughters, and her birth was seen as a miracle by her parents, who had been told by doctors that they would not be able to conceive again after her older sister, Caroline. Alana was very close to her sister from an early age and was raised with strong values of hard work and education. Her parents worked tirelessly at a large car factory to provide for their daughters and instill in them a love of learning. Both sisters excelled in school, but Alana stood out for her determination and passion for learning, spending all her free time reading and pursuing extracurricular activities like dance, gymnastics, and track and field. During her summer breaks, Alana worked in cornfields to help her family and learned to budget wisely. She excelled in math and science, and by high school, she had set her sights on a career in medicine. She graduated as the top student and enrolled in a prestigious medical university without issue. It was during high school that Alana began dating Matthew Ryan, who was also studying medicine. Their romance lasted throughout their university days, but after graduation, Alana decided to continue her studies in Ottawa's university residency program, while Matthew settled for a job at a local hospital. Despite the distance, Alana and Matthew's relationship continued until nearly 2002, during which time they even planned to marry. However, they eventually decided to remain friends. By then, Alana was interning at one of the country's top clinics and was working towards earning a doctorate, while Matthew's career had stalled. In February 2003, Alana experienced love at first sight while working a night shift at the hospital. She walked into the staff room and noticed a new colleague, Mohammed Shamji, who instantly captured her attention. Mohammed was a year older than Alana and a resident in the neurosurgery department. Coming from an esteemed family of medical professionals, Mohammed was born and raised in Ottawa. His father, Farid Shamji, was a distinguished surgeon, and his mother, Edith, was a skilled psychiatrist. His older brother, Ali, was a seasoned medical biophysicist, and both brothers had graduated from Yale University. Mohammed later returned to Canada to earn his doctorate from the University of Western Ontario. Although Mohammed initially showed no interest in approaching Alana, she was drawn to him and attempted to catch his eye. Eventually, Mohammed asked his colleagues for her phone number, sent her a message, and their romance began to flourish. Alana thought Mohammed was shy and introverted because he rarely initiated conversations, felt uneasy on dates, and would suddenly change topics or become silent. However, it was later revealed that his distant behavior wasn't due to shyness, but rather a lack of interest, as he was already secretly dating another woman. When Alana found out about the other woman, she became determined to win Mohammed over and become his sole partner. Their relationship was tumultuous during the first year, with 3 breakups and reconnections, mainly due to Alana's persistence. Despite her parents' advice to leave Mohammed, Alana remained committed, believing she had found her true love. Alana showered Mohammed with gifts, surprises, and home-cooked meals, but he only occasionally reciprocated her efforts. Meanwhile, Mohammed seemed to simply accept her affections, reciprocating only infrequently, creating an unbalanced dynamic in their relationship. In the summer of 2004, Alana discovered she was unexpectedly pregnant, which caused anxiety for both her and her partner. Despite their surprise, Mohammed, who was raised in a traditional Muslim country, felt pressured to marry Alana before their child was born, following cultural customs. The couple had 2 wedding ceremonies in early September 2004, one that respected Mohammed's family's cultural traditions and another with friends at a trendy restaurant complex. Although they appeared happy and in love, their marriage marked the beginning of a difficult period that would ultimately end in tragedy. In January 2005, they moved into a spacious house in an upscale Ottawa neighborhood and welcomed their daughter, Yasmin Ina. However, the birth of their daughter did not improve their marriage. Mohammed prioritized his career and education, neglecting his wife and newborn daughter. Moreover, he openly expressed his disappointment at not having a son. After having her baby, Alana took maternity leave to care for her child and manage the household. However, this led to tension with her husband, who would come home from work and isolate himself in his office, hardly spending time with Alana and their daughter. As time passed, he grew increasingly anxious, irritable, and critical, often belittling Alana's appearance, refusing her cooking, and even calling her stupid and useless. Despite her struggles, Alana kept her family problems private, not even sharing them with close friends or her parents. However, one day, while talking to her mother on the phone, her husband came home in a bad mood and began insulting Alana, which her mother overheard. Her mother tried to defend her, but her son-in-law shifted the blame to Alana, claiming she was responsible for their failing marriage. Alana's mother advised her to file for divorce and leave the abusive relationship, but Alana refused, insisting that she loved her husband and could handle the situation herself. Alana remained silent about Mohammed's physical abuse because the verbal abuse had become routine for him. However, the situation escalated in the summer of 2005 when Mohammed, in a fit of rage, punched Alana in the face, breaking her nose. Alana, holding her baby, fled to friends and reported the domestic violence to the police. She also decided to divorce Mohammed and leave him for good. Surprisingly, Mohammed began pleading with Alana to return, promising to never hit her again, raise his voice, or engage in any form of abuse. He claimed he would change and make their family life perfect, controlling his emotions. While Mohammed appeared genuinely remorseful, his actions were motivated by self-interest. As a young neurosurgeon, he was about to enroll at Duke University to pursue his doctorate, and a criminal conviction would jeopardize his promising medical career. Mohammed's primary concern was his own future, but he managed to convince Alana to drop the charges and file for divorce. She even agreed to follow him to North Carolina, where he would continue his studies and earn a degree. After a period of turmoil, Mohammed and Alana's family life became more stable. Mohammed was accepted into a competitive biomed engineering program, a significant achievement. Alana, meanwhile, enrolled in a master's program at Duke University, where she received a scholarship to cover her tuition. As a result, the couple had more time for each other, and their relationship became more solid. They decided to have another child, and in August 2007, their daughter Fisa was born. Although Mohammed had hoped for a son, the family was generally happy. In the summer of 2009, the family returned to Canada, settling back into their Ottawa home. Alana quickly returned to work as a family doctor at a prestigious hospital, earning a good reputation. Mohammed juggled his work, studies, and university teaching responsibilities. Around the same time, social media was becoming popular, and the couple started a personal blog that presented an idealized image of their family life. Behind their perfect facade, Mohammed and Alana's relationship was troubled. He controlled every aspect of her life, dictating who she could see, what she wore, and even monitoring her online activities. He would openly criticize her appearance, style, and parenting, but Alana chose to remain silent and tolerant of his behavior. As time passed, Mohammed's aggression and yelling increased, always blaming Alana for their arguments and problems. In 2011, he was offered a prestigious fellowship in spinal surgery in Calgary, which he accepted. However, he moved without his family, leaving them behind in Ottawa, and they were forced to maintain a long-distance relationship for over a year. During a visit home, Mohammed left his laptop on, and Alana discovered a message on his social media from a woman, implying a romantic involvement. When Alana confronted him directly, he admitted to having an affair and didn't deny it. This revelation was a devastating blow to Alana, and she considered divorcing her husband again. Her family thought she wouldn't forgive him this time, but surprisingly, Alana gave her family another chance. Mohammed promised to end the affair and start fresh in Toronto, where he had received a prestigious job offer. Mohammed and Alana had a third child, Marius, in 2013, hoping to strengthen their family. However, Mohammed's behavior towards Alana didn't change, and he continued to focus on his medical career, becoming a respected neurosurgeon. Alana also advanced in her career, but tension between them grew. During a family ski vacation, Mohammed's abuse resumed, leaving Alana with a deep cut on her arm that required stitches. Initially, she claimed it was a skiing accident, but later confided in her friend that it was from an argument over another affair. Alana overheard a private phone call between her husband, Mohammed, and his mistress. When she confronted him about it, he physically abused her. A friend advised Alana to divorce Mohammed, but she refused. Her friend jokingly suggested that Alana have an affair to get revenge, and although they laughed, Alana might have considered it a viable option to get back at her cheating husband. The summer of 2016 was difficult. While their older kids were at camp, Alana's youngest child stayed with her parents. During this time, the couple's relationship deteriorated. In early September, they celebrated their 12th anniversary on social media, but just a week later, they discussed getting a divorce. Mohammed refused, stating he was content, while Alana felt desperate. She started an affair with a colleague who had shown interest in her. Alana found solace in this new relationship, enjoying the care, attention, and feeling loved again. She became so enthralled that she might have considered leaving her children behind to be with her lover. On November 25, 2016, a fierce argument erupted in the family when Elena told her husband Mohammed that divorce was inevitable. The next day, she consulted a divorce lawyer and then departed for a 3-day medical conference in another city. During her time away, Mohammed frantically sent her messages begging her to reconsider and salvage their marriage for the sake of their children. When Elena returned home on November 30th, she made a final phone call to her parents, attempting to reassure them that everything was okay despite her anxious tone. What her parents didn't know was that Elena had tried to contact the police that evening, but unfortunately, she misdialed the number, which would have devastating consequences. The following day, December 1st, Elena's mother Anna tried to reach her daughter, but couldn't get through, so she called her son-in-law Mohammed to find out what was going on. In a calm tone, Mohammed deceived Anna, telling her that Elena had abandoned him and their children in the middle of the night to be with another man. Elena's parents were suspicious of Mohammed's story, knowing their daughter would never abandon her children. They contacted a close friend of Elena's who lived nearby, asking her to keep an eye on the Mohammed home while they rushed to Toronto to file a missing persons report with the police. Alana's family was worried when her friend said her car was still in the driveway. When her parents arrived at her house, everything seemed normal, but Mohammed was upset, insisting that Alana was with her boyfriend and that the police had been called unnecessarily. He had already told the police this when they visited earlier. Later, on December 2nd, a man walking his dog near the river, about 24 miles from the Mohammed's home, found a new-looking large suitcase under a bridge. Despite initial hesitation, his curiosity led him to open it, and he was shocked to find the body of a blonde woman inside. He immediately contacted the police, who sent the suitcase and body to the medical examiner to identify the victim and determine the cause of death. Alana's body was easily identified due to a luggage tag on her suitcase from a recent conference trip. Her parents confirmed her identity. An autopsy revealed that she had suffered multiple abrasions and bruises, but the primary cause of death was mechanical asphyxiation and a broken neck. The body was found dressed in pajamas, with no shoes, and positioned in a way that suggested she was placed in the suitcase shortly after death. Mohammed, the suspect, was apprehended the same evening at a coffee shop where he was consulting with a lawyer, apparently preparing to flee the country. However, he was caught before he could escape. He was charged with first-degree murder, but the neurosurgeon denied any involvement in the crime. A disturbing aspect of the incident came to light. Their 12-year-old daughter, Yasmin, had unknowingly witnessed her mother's murder. According to Yasmin, she heard screams and noise coming from her parents' room and rushed in. She cracked open the door to see her father kneeling behind the bed, with her mother likely lying on the floor, out of her sight. Mohammed yelled at Yasmin, telling her to leave, shut the door, and go back to bed. The next morning, he told the girls that their mother had left. Despite her young age, Yasmin sensed that something terrible had happened, but she struggled to believe that her father could have killed her mother. To protect Yasmin from having to testify in court, Mohammed confessed to the crime and recounted the events of that fateful evening. Mohammed and his wife, Alana, got into an argument about her infidelity and desire for a divorce. The situation escalated quickly, and Mohammed physically attacked Alana, knocking a phone out of her hand as she tried to call the police. He struck her multiple times in the face, pinned her to the floor, and strangled her. Their daughter walked into the room but couldn't see what was happening because of the bed. When Mohammed realized Alana was no longer breathing, he tried to resuscitate her, but it was too late. He had broken her neck during the attack. He then put her body in a large suitcase, drove around for hours, and eventually threw the suitcase off a bridge into a river, hoping the current would carry it away. However, the suitcase got stuck against the bridge's foundation in the darkness. During Muhammad's trial in 2017, his father, Farid Shamji, caused an uproar by making disparaging comments about his deceased daughter-in-law. Shamji tried to justify his son's actions, claiming Alana had been unfaithful and provoked Muhammad. These comments led to an investigation, and Shamji's medical license was revoked in April 2019. Muhammad was convicted of second-degree murder and received a life sentence, but he will be eligible for parole in 14 years. Since he had already served time during the trial, he could be released as early as 2030. As part of his sentence, Muhammad is not allowed to contact his children or Alana's parents and must pay them a substantial amount of money in compensation. He has also been banned from practicing medicine or teaching again, having his medical license revoked permanently. Alana's parents are now taking care of the children, who have been left without their parents. The case of Michaela Gerecht. On November 19, 1988, Michaela, then 9 years old, and her friend Katrina were busy trying on different outfits for an upcoming school performance at their homes. The joy was palpable as it marked the beginning of the Thanksgiving break. Around 10 a.m., Katrina's dad gave her $5 to buy some candy. The two friends rushed to Michaela's house to ask her mom if they could visit the nearby store, which was less than a mile away. Although they had been to the store many times before, with family or older neighbors, Michaela's mom was hesitant to let them go alone, citing their young age and lack of experience. After some cajoling, Michaela's mom finally agreed, on the condition that they would purchase the candy and head straight back home. As Michaela was her parents' long-awaited first child, a true miracle, her mom was particularly concerned about her safety. Despite her reservations, Michaela's mom believed that nothing bad would happen, given the store's proximity and their plan to ride their scooters there. Michaela raced back to Katrina's house. They planned to use 2 scooters, so Katrina took hers and borrowed another one from her brother. They went to the store, parked their scooters nearby, and went inside to make their purchases. When they came out, they got engrossed in conversation and completely forgot about their scooters. They started walking home, but quickly realized their mistake and returned to where they had left the scooters. That's when they noticed Michaela's scooter was missing. Assuming someone had moved it, they decided to search the store area from different angles. Michaela scanned the parking lot and soon spotted her scooter next to a car parked a short distance from the store. As she approached it, Katrina suddenly heard a terrifying scream. She ran back and saw a man grabbing Michaela and forcing her into the car beside her scooter. The man promptly got back in the driver's seat and sped off. Shaken, Katrina rushed into the store and alerted the cashier about the incident. The cashier immediately called the police, who arrived at the scene within minutes. The store employee also contacted Michaela's father, as they were acquainted, and informed him of the situation. Michaela's father, accompanied by Katrina's father, hurried to the store where investigators had already gathered. He instructed his wife to remain at home by the phone, awaiting a possible call from the police. The detectives faced a multitude of challenges from the outset. The lack of surveillance cameras near the store and the sole witness, Katrina, who was in a state of deep shock and barely able to speak, hindered their progress. Her father was permitted to take her home, leaving the store cashier as the initial lead. She recounted a suspicious individual loitering around the store shortly before the abduction. He had parked his car, exited, but never entered the store, instead opting to walk along the building, peering through windows and seemingly watching them. The cashier had a gut feeling that he might be planning to rob her. Based on her description, the man was white, approximately 30 years old, and sported a prominent mustache. He arrived in an old maroon-colored sedan, but the model and license plate number remained unclear. After gathering the suspect's description, the police created a composite sketch and disseminated it to the media. News of the abduction spread rapidly throughout the city and beyond, leaving the public shocked that such a brazen act could occur in a busy area. The police also shared the sketch and a description of the suspect's car with hundreds of patrol officers across the county. Officers began stopping vehicles matching the description, hoping to find her alive. Meanwhile, the detectives turned over Maya's scooter to forensic experts for analysis. They suspected that the kidnapper had witnessed Maya and Katrina's arrival at the store and strategically positioned one of the scooters near the back door of his car to facilitate the abduction. This led them to believe that his fingerprints might be on the scooter, and indeed they discovered a fingerprint that didn't match anyone in Katrina's family or the 9-year-old girl. However, there was a hitch. The fingerprint was incomplete, making it challenging to conduct a database search at the time, as the technology wasn't sophisticated enough for such procedures. As a result, the police had to rely on direct comparisons with potential suspects. By the evening of the abduction, the FBI had joined the investigation, prompted by a surge in child disappearances, not only in Hayward but also in surrounding cities. They suspected a link between Michaela's case and these other vanishings. Despite the FBI's involvement and widespread media attention, little progress was made in locating the missing girl. Michaela's parents were understandably heartbroken, and her mother was consumed by guilt, replaying the events leading up to the abduction. In particular, she recalled an unsettling incident just a week prior, where Michaela had risen unusually early, sat at the kitchen table, and claimed to be writing a poem. This was peculiar, given her daughter's usual sleep patterns, and the poem's theme, people being abducted and hidden in attics but not killed, seemed eerily prescient. At the time, her mother had found it strange for a 9-year-old to conceive such ideas, but in hindsight, it took on an uncanny, almost prophetic quality, leaving her to wonder if Michaela had unwittingly foreseen her own fate. In the 2 days following the abduction, the police launched an exhaustive search for the suspect and the missing girl, but despite their best efforts, they failed to make any progress. In a bid to gather more information, they decided to re-interview Katrina, hoping that time might have jogged her memory. However, this decision led to a perplexing twist. The girl who witnessed the abduction and the cashier provided contradictory descriptions of the kidnapper's appearance. Katrina described the man as around 20 years old, with long, unkempt, light-colored hair that reached his shoulders and a face covered in pimples. She also remembered his piercing blue eyes, reminiscent of a fox's. Furthermore, she recalled some details about the car, a beige sedan with a boxy shape and numerous dents. In contrast, the cashier's suspicion had been sparked by a man near the store whose description was vastly different from Katrina's. This discrepancy presented a significant challenge for the investigators, who had already circulated an inaccurate composite sketch of the suspect through the media, and to patrol officers, leading the search for an entirely different individual. This unfolding drama took place within the critical first 48 hours following the abduction, the most crucial period for a swift resolution. Based on her description, they promptly created a new composite sketch and redistributed it. Additionally, the police decided to interview all men in the area with prior convictions for sexual offenses. Numerous volunteers also joined the efforts, going door to door to interview residents in the hopes of someone recognizing the abductor or providing any other relevant information. They posted thousands of flyers featuring her photo and a description of the incident, and in just the initial few days, a staggering 42,000 of these flyers were distributed. After several days, they received their first promising lead. 3 individuals contacted them, reporting a hiking trip in a vast national park near their city. During their excursion, the hikers stumbled upon footprints on the ground, distinguishing one set belonging to an adult and another to a child. They decided to follow these tracks, eventually coming across a blanket and empty fast food wrappers deep in the forest. The police considered the possibility that these tracks might be connected to Maya and her abductor. The FBI's psychological profile also suggested that the abductor would likely take his victim to a secluded location, far removed from civilization. Given the park's size and its proximity to the city, it seemed to align perfectly with this theory. Detectives decided to conduct a thorough search of the park, utilizing all available resources. They scoured the ground, while helicopters equipped with thermal imaging scanned the area from above. However, all their efforts yielded nothing, as they couldn't find her or any incriminating evidence. The police extended their search to other parks, mountains, and remote areas, but all leads proved futile. Meanwhile, the case's nationwide media coverage sparked a deluge of tips, with over 4,000 received within the first month alone. Investigators faced the daunting task of pursuing each lead, a challenge that proved overwhelming. The case was a hot topic of discussion among San Francisco's neighboring residents and nearby cities, with prominent figures even making public appeals for information. As the search continued, a substantial $70,000 reward was offered, and Michaela's photograph was plastered on millions of milk cartons across the state. Despite the massive community effort and numerous leads, detectives made little headway. By December's end, a month and a half into the investigation, the police had only managed to exhaust thousands of leads, with no progress made in the following months. Still, the police, along with Michaela's mother, who had launched her own investigation, studying similar cases and searching for possible suspects, persisted in their efforts, holding on to the hope that Michaela was still alive, being held captive by her abductor. In 1991, detectives focused on 43-year-old Timothy Binder, and the deeper they dug into his background, the more disturbing it became. Before Michaela's abduction, Binder was already under police suspicion due to his odd behavior. He had been sending gifts, letters, and money to several young girls, with some of these letters featuring highlighted Bible passages that included phrases like, "I have chosen you," and "be with me." Parents of some of these girls grew concerned and reported him to the police, which led to an interrogation of Binder. He claimed he was simply trying to befriend these girls, thinking they were lonely. However, the investigation uncovered a worrying history. In 1985, Binder was fired from his job in Child Protective Services in Colorado for collecting personal information about young girls and then sending them gifts and letters. A search of his van revealed many photographs of children and Bible passages decorating the interior. Additionally, Binder had previously been arrested for trying to lure two girls into his van, although no charges were filed. Furthermore, he regularly visited local cemeteries, spending an unusual amount of time at the graves of young girls. 6 months before Michaela was abducted, a 7-year-old girl named Amber vanished in the same area. Binder got in touch with Amber's mother, offering to help and frequently visiting her home. He even sent a letter to the police, predicting that the next girl to go missing would be 9 years old. Months later, Michaela, who was also 9, was abducted. After she disappeared, Binder contacted her mother repeatedly, visited her home, and offered his assistance. But the disturbing pattern continued. In early December 1988, Binder sent a Christmas card to an FBI profiler he had spoken to before, and the card showed a girl holding up 4 fingers. Shortly after, a 4-year-old girl went missing in the same town. Despite these disturbing circumstances, which comprised circumstantial evidence, detectives secured a search warrant for Binder's home, where he resided with his wife. Unfortunately, their search yielded no concrete leads linking him to the abductions. When news of Binder's peculiar behavior hit the newspapers, the public began to suspect he might be a serial killer, resulting in harassment and attacks on him and his family. He subsequently sued the city authorities for disseminating misinformation and emerged victorious. Detectives persisted in investigating Binder for several months, but ultimately concluded that there was no concrete evidence implicating him in these crimes. Some detectives believed that he posed no threat to children, and his unusual behavior might have been unrelated to these cases. Consequently, the police shifted their focus towards alternative suspects. A new substantial lead did not emerge until December 1992, 4 years after Michaela's disappearance. An inmate from Indiana, serving time for robbery, contacted the police, claiming to know the identity of her abductor. He stated that he had helped bury her body in the same park where traces of evidence had been discovered. Initially, investigators showed little interest in this tip, but when the inmate wrote a letter to a prominent San Francisco newspaper, the police faced harsh criticism, and under public pressure, they reluctantly decided to interview him. He promised not only to pinpoint Michaela's exact burial site, but also to lead them directly to the killer. The inmate was transferred to California, where he collaborated with the police on a search mission. He claimed that the body was buried in a gladiolus field, and the officers devoted all their resources to scouring that area. The search lasted 8 hours, until the inmate unexpectedly confessed that he had fabricated the entire story. He explained that his intention was to bring some comfort to Michaela's family and help them find closure. However, Michaela's relatives and the police were outraged by his false statement. As a consequence, the inmate received an additional 6.5-year prison sentence, nearly doubling his original sentence, and was ordered to pay Michaela's family $6,000 in compensation. In August 2000, a new lead emerged in the case with the arrest of Curtis Anderson, suspected of murdering a 7-year-old girl in Valo a year earlier. He confessed to the crime and was imprisoned. However, detectives harbored suspicions that he might be responsible for similar crimes. For 7 years, no concrete evidence supported this theory until Curtis reached out to the FBI. Weakened by poor health, he wanted to confess to additional crimes before his demise. His confession revealed that he had killed 13 more girls and women, including 7-year-old Amber, who vanished 6 months before Michaela. Curtis provided specific details that made investigators take his involvement seriously. Nonetheless, proving his guilt remained a daunting task, as there was no physical evidence and the victims' bodies remained unfound. Regarding Michaela's case, Curtis denied any involvement, despite his car's striking resemblance to Katrina's description. Although FBI agents planned to continue questioning him, Curtis passed away in 2012, halting the investigation. A new lead emerged when an inmate contacted the police, suggesting that his associate Lauren Herzog bore a remarkable likeness to the composite sketch of the suspect. Detectives were intrigued, given Lauren and his partner's conviction for multiple murders they committed together. Although suspected of killing 19 people, investigators could only prove some of these crimes. Notably, Lauren had taken his own life in prison a month before the inmate came forward. Undeterred, the police investigated Lauren's potential involvement. A younger photo of Lauren did resemble the composite sketch, but detectives required more concrete evidence. They proceeded to excavate a well where Lauren and his partner had disposed of their victims' bodies. The excavation yielded thousands of bone fragments, which medical experts meticulously examined. After extensive analysis, it was determined that the bones belonged to 5 different girls, but none matched Michaela's DNA. Despite excavating multiple wells, the police were unable to find any evidence linking Lauren to the case. In 2018, a significant breakthrough emerged in the case. David Mitch, a man already imprisoned for killing his 39-year-old girlfriend in 1989, was charged with the murders of 2 women in 1986 near Michaela's town. The key to this development was modern DNA analysis, which enabled investigators to link David to these crimes by analyzing biological material found under the victim's nails, something that was impossible back then. Detectives decided to investigate his possible involvement in Michaela's case and found several intriguing connections. They discovered that David was in the same area when Michaela was abducted, matching Katrina's description and driving a similar car. Since David's fingerprints were already on record, experts re-examined the partial fingerprint found on Michaela's scooter. Thanks to modern technology, they made a significant breakthrough. The fingerprint on the scooter perfectly matched David's. By 2020, the hope of Michaela being alive had faded, and David was charged with her murder. He denied his involvement, and the case went to trial in early 2023. Preliminary hearings took place, and the judge ruled that there was sufficient evidence to proceed with the trial. David's lawyer attempted to challenge the evidence, claiming that the scooter's fingerprint didn't necessarily link his client to the crime. However, given the circumstances, this argument seemed dubious, as it was apparent that the abductor had deliberately left the scooter near the car's back door to ambush her when she approached. The defense also tried to contest the murder charges, as Michaela's body was never found, implying a lack of proof of her death. However, this argument held little weight, as numerous modern cases have resulted in convictions without the recovery of the victim's body, given the substantial evidence. Furthermore, David had a history of violent crimes throughout his life. Michaela's father traveled from out of state to attend the press conference announcing the arrest of his daughter's kidnapper. Unfortunately, Michaela's mother, who had held on to hope of finding her daughter alive all these years, was unable to attend as she battled cancer. Shortly after the news of the arrest, she passed away, thanking the investigators for uncovering the truth before her life's end. The police pledged to continue searching for Michaela's remains, offering a $10,000 reward for any valuable information that could lead to her discovery. David's trial is about to start and will cover 3 separate cases: the murder of Michaela and 2 other cases where his DNA was found under the victim's fingernails. Initially, the prosecution pushed for the death penalty, but when the district attorney changed, the new one decided not to pursue it. If David is found guilty of all 3 murders, he will not receive a life sentence, but rather a prison sentence of several decades. This decision has outraged the victims, families, and garnered significant media attention, with David's lawyer being the only one to support this change. However, considering David is already 62 years old, it's unlikely he will live to see the end of even this reduced sentence. The case of Katrina Ashley Edlund Smith. Katrina Ashley Edlund was born on July 16, 1982, to her mother, Vicky. She had 2 siblings, an older brother named Chad and a younger sister named Miranda, which makes Miranda the youngest child. As a child, Miranda idolized her older sister Katrina. She would often try on Katrina's clothes and use her makeup as she admired and wanted to emulate her. Over the years, the sisters developed a deep bond, eventually becoming more like best friends than siblings. When Katrina was young, her parents separated, and she lived with her mother in Maison Park, Illinois, a bedroom community outside the city. Those who knew her described Katrina as a kind-hearted and fun-loving individual. She cherished the holiday season and took great pleasure in giving gag gifts to her friends and family. Overall, Katrina was a happy and deeply involved member of her church. She had a strong desire to help others and was always willing to offer her time to anyone in need. Katrina was happy, yet she longed to find love. At the age of 20, she met Todd Smith at a bar and thought she had found her Prince Charming. Todd, a successful financial planner with his own business, was a single father of 3 daughters. Despite their differences, the couple quickly connected, and Todd's flexible work schedule allowed them to travel frequently. 3 years into their relationship, Todd proposed to Katrina, and she happily accepted. They planned an intimate ceremony in a local park, and Katrina was over the moon about their future together. She had grown to love her stepdaughters and was eager to build a bright future with Todd. Katrina's mother, Vicky, and her siblings, Chad and Miranda, adored Todd and thought he was a great guy. They trusted him to take care of Katrina and believed the couple was a perfect match. Following their marriage, Katrina and Todd Smith settled in Maison Park, where they started building their life together. On October 20th, 2012, Katrina, 30, called her mother, Vicky, and told her she was house-sitting for a friend. During their conversation, Katrina mentioned she would visit her mother for dinner on October 24th and had some news to share. Vicky sensed something was amiss but wasn't sure what it could be. Before hanging up, Vicky promised to cook Katrina's favorite dish, chicken and dumplings. However, she would never get the chance to fulfill that promise, as Katrina disappeared just days after the call, and Vicky would never see her again. At 5 p.m. on October 23rd, Todd Smith contacted 911 to report his wife Katrina's disappearance. Todd told the dispatcher Katrina was house-sitting for a friend and that he hadn't been able to reach her for hours. He said the house was empty when he drove to where she was staying. Katrina's sister and brother, Miranda and Chad, grew concerned when they learned of her disappearance. Chad, who was training with the U.S. Army in Oklahoma, immediately flew to Illinois to help search for his sister. On the night of the 23rd, a concerned local resident contacted the police to report an abandoned vehicle near Rock River, stating that it was not parked on the roadside, but rather in an easement, giving the impression it had been hastily deserted. Upon responding to the scene, the police officers ran the license plate and discovered it was registered to Katrina Smith. Following a thorough examination of the vehicle, the officers found no signs of a struggle or any indication of Katrina's presence. When Vicky, Katrina's mother, learned that her daughter's car had been found abandoned in an unfamiliar area, she was convinced that something terrible had befallen Katrina. To Vicky, it was the only logical explanation. If Katrina's car was in that location, someone must have taken her and left the vehicle there. After Katrina's car was found, her case was reclassified as a missing person and a large-scale search effort was launched. On October 12th at 11 p.m., Todd Smith was taken to the Winnebago County Sheriff's Department for a formal interview. During the interview, Todd told the detective that he had last seen Katrina on October 22nd. According to Todd, Katrina came home briefly to do her laundry because she had a big job interview scheduled for the next day. While the laundry was in progress, Todd said Katrina left to go to the mall to make a purchase and returned home by 8:30 p.m. However, Todd added that Katrina then left the house again, saying she had one more stop to make before returning to the house she was house-sitting for a friend the following day. After Katrina was reported missing, Todd made an emotional appeal to the media, pleading for her safe return. Overcome with emotion, Todd broke down in tears as he expressed his desperation to find his wife. Katrina's brother, Chad, who was in Army training in Oklahoma, arrived in Illinois and joined the search effort. At the park, Chad took charge, using his military training to organize the volunteers who had come to search for Katrina. He created a map, divided the volunteers into teams, and assigned them areas to search. Meanwhile, the police also combed the park, using dogs and a systematic search pattern to ensure that no potential evidence was missed. Katrina's mother, Vicky, distributed missing person flyers throughout the town, posting them at gas stations, convenience stores, and lampposts. She aimed to raise awareness and inform as many people as possible about Katrina's disappearance. However, overwhelmed by grief and fear of finding her daughter's body, Vicky couldn't bring herself to participate in the search. Chad encouraged Todd to stay strong, urging him to stay focused on finding Katrina during this difficult time. Meanwhile, an officer investigating the area where Katrina's car was found discovered her purse. Further down the road, the officer found more of her belongings, including her cell phone and blood-stained towels, suggesting that someone had been getting rid of her property as they drove away from her abandoned vehicle. The officers conducted a thorough investigation into Katrina's disappearance, seeking to understand every facet of her life. To do this, they explored her relationships outside of her marriage, potential involvement in gambling or drugs, and documented her daily routine. Katrina's friends and family were extensively interviewed, and they all described her as a kind, responsible person who prioritized her responsibilities and avoided dubious activities. According to their testimonies, Katrina was dedicated to her work and had a strong work ethic. She showed no signs of addiction or irresponsible behavior and was known as a devoted spouse and hardworking individual who maintained her integrity. During the search for Katrina, a woman came forward with an intriguing tip. She claimed to have seen a blue vehicle, matching the description of Katrina's car, stopped on a bridge over Rock River on the night she disappeared. The trunk of the car was open, and the woman saw someone kneeling behind it, although she couldn't provide any details about the person's gender or race. The officers suspected foul play might have led Katrina to end up in the river, but they needed more concrete evidence to back up this idea. They decided to investigate further to identify a potential motive for harming Katrina. Although Katrina and her husband Todd seemed to have a happy marriage, the authorities were suspicious of Todd and thought he might be involved in her disappearance, suspecting that there could be hidden conflicts or secrets in their relationship that weren't immediately clear. As the police continued to investigate Katrina's disappearance, they received a tip that led them to a new suspect. They discovered that a local boy had been obsessed with Katrina, an obsession that started earlier that year when Katrina told her friends about a teenage boy from her church who was fixated on her. Allegedly, the boy had spied on Katrina through her bedroom window, and Katrina had become increasingly anxious due to his behavior. However, the voyeurism stopped when the boy left for college. 3 days into the search for Katrina, her cell phone, which was being examined at the crime lab, yielded crucial clues. The phone proved to be a treasure trove of information for the investigating officers. By analyzing Katrina's cell phone, they gained valuable insights into her text messages, including incoming and outgoing calls, pictures, videos, and even her GPS location, providing a detailed record of her activities. The data from Katrina's phone gave the police a wealth of clue, enabling them to build a clearer picture of her activities. They discovered that she was having an affair with a co-worker, Guy Gabriel, which started innocently but grew stronger until they became romantically involved. Detectives' background check on Guy Gabriel showed a disturbing past, domestic violence and threatening texts to Katrina, demanding she leave her husband Todd for him. With a violent history and menacing messages, Guy became the prime suspect in Katrina's disappearance, suspected of reacting violently when she refused him. Katrina and Todd were believed to have the ideal marriage, making the discovery of her infidelity a shock to everyone. Todd, who had been unaware of his wife's affair until the police investigation, was devastated by the news of her unfaithfulness. During the course of the investigation, Guy Gabriel was questioned by police at their department. While he did admit to having had an affair with Katrina, he denied any involvement in her disappearance and claimed to have been at work on the night she went missing. During their investigation into Katrina's affair with Guy Gabriel, the police uncovered an incident that had taken place 2 weeks prior to her disappearance. According to witnesses, a black Volkswagen Jetta sped through the parking lot of the auto shop where Katrina and Guy worked during their lunch break. The driver, whose face was masked, tossed a stack of flyers through the open sunroof, which scattered at the feet of the employees who had gathered. The flyers contained a derogatory comment about Katrina's relationship with Guy Gabriel, but the identity of the driver remained unknown. When the police interviewed Katrina's hairstylist, she disclosed that Katrina had confided in her about feeling threatened and had expressed a desire to buy a gun for self-protection. Katrina had also shared her concerns that someone was tailing her and had even visited a store to have her phone checked for a potential tracking device. At the police garage, investigators processed Katrina's car as a crime scene and searched for evidence. They used luminol, a chemical that glows brightly when it comes into contact with blood. The luminol test revealed a significant amount of blood in the trunk of Katrina's car. Later, a body was found in the river by investigators. They pulled it from the water, but decomposition had set in severely, making it hard to identify. The body was then taken to the medical examiner's office, where an autopsy was performed to figure out how she died. By comparing the body's dental records to Katrina Smith's, the medical examiner confirmed the remains belonged to her. The autopsy showed that Katrina's death was caused by a severe blow to the head. Katrina's family was devastated when they learned that her body had been found and that she had been murdered by blunt force trauma to her head. Her mother, Vicky, was in shock and couldn't bear the thought that her daughter had been violently beaten. The police had also investigated a teenage boy who was suspected of stalking Katrina, but they cleared him as a suspect after verifying his alibi. He had been on campus at his college during the time of Katrina's disappearance and murder, so the police focus shifted to Katrina's boyfriend, Guy Gabriel, who was outside of her marriage. Guy Gabriel provided an alibi for the night Katrina vanished, stating he was at work, and his managers verified this with his time card. Several co-workers also confirmed they saw him at the workplace, clearing him of suspicion in Katrina's disappearance and murder. The police wanted to know what Guy thought about who might have hurt Katrina. Guy told them that Katrina's husband, Todd, was controlling and that he had warned Katrina to get out of the marriage. According to Guy, Todd's behavior was potentially volatile and could have led to violence. As the police investigated Katrina's marriage to Todd, they uncovered troubling facts. Katrina had told multiple people she wanted a divorce and had met with the divorce lawyer the day before she disappeared. Although she claimed to be house-sitting at a friend's condo, the police found that she had actually moved in due to her separation from Todd. After gathering information and conducting interviews, the police began to suspect Todd of being involved in the mysterious flyer incident at Katrina's workplace. Their suspicion intensified when they discovered that Todd had recently test-driven a black VW Jetta, the same model and color as the car linked to the incident. The timing of these events also raised suspicions, as Todd allegedly took the test drive around the same time the incident occurred. When the police informed Katrina's family that Todd was not only the prime suspect in her murder investigation, but had also been taken into custody, they were shocked and disbelieving. They had grown to love and respect Todd, considering him part of the family. The news left everyone feeling devastated and betrayed. Katrina's mother, Vicky, was particularly affected, as the realization that her son-in-law could be responsible for her daughter's murder made her physically ill. She had always trusted and respected Todd and could not imagine that he was capable of such a heinous crime. The police discovered that Todd's financial investment company was facing legal troubles, which shed light on his financial situation. As Todd was unemployed, Katrina was the primary earner for the family. This led the police to suspect that Todd may have had a motive to murder his wife, as he would gain control of the family's finances if she left him and their daughters. To gather evidence, the police obtained a search warrant for the couple's home. During the search, investigators found a baseball bat in the garage with traces of blood on it. The bat's discovery was significant, as Katrina's injuries were consistent with blunt force trauma, suggesting it could be the murder weapon. The investigators took a DNA test to confirm their suspicions about it. The test results showed that Katrina's blood, which established a strong link between the murder weapon and the victim. Additionally, the investigators found a large area under the car that had been thoroughly cleaned, indicating that someone had tried to remove evidence. Closer examination revealed that the blood stains found under the vehicle matched Katrina's DNA profile, providing further evidence. 30 days after Katrina Smith's murder, her husband, Todd Smith, was arrested and charged with her murder, bringing relief to her family. Todd's trial began on January 11, 2017. The prosecution presented its case to the jury, reconstructing the events of the night Katrina was murdered. It emerged that Katrina had recently consulted a divorce lawyer to discuss her marital issues, which became a key point for the prosecution. They argued that Katrina's decision to seek legal help was evidence of a troubled relationship, which motivated Todd to commit the crime. According to the state, Katrina went to Todd's house to do her laundry in preparation for a job interview she had scheduled for the next morning. During this visit, the prosecution claimed that Katrina made it clear to Todd that their marriage was truly over. The prosecution argued that this declaration led Todd to react violently. While Katrina was in the garage, the state alleged that Todd, in a fit of rage, grabbed a baseball bat and mercilessly beat her to death. After making sure Katrina was dead, Todd allegedly moved her body into the trunk of her car. He then drove to a remote location called Rock River, where he disposed of her body by throwing it off a nearby bridge. Following the disposal of Katrina's body, Todd abandoned her car on the side of the road and walked back home to wash away any evidence. He got rid of her cell phone and the bloody towels he had used to clean up. The jurors found Todd guilty and sentenced him to 55 years in prison. The case of John Thomas McGuire. Life in an orphanage is difficult and unpredictable. You have no personal space, no control over your time, and if you're not able to stand up for yourself, you're likely to be bullied by the older kids. Amanda and Anna Marie McClure, however, were a little more fortunate because they had each other. With two of them, they were more able to defend themselves. The sisters preferred to keep to themselves and didn't try to make friends with anyone else. They were hopeful that their stay in the orphanage would be short-lived. They believed that their mother would soon find out that their father, Larry McClure, was in prison and that she would come to take them away. It was impossible to keep their father's imprisonment a secret. The news was all over TV and in the newspapers for a long time. As time passed, days turned into weeks and weeks turned into months. Unfortunately, it became clear that they might not be returning home anytime soon. One day, the sisters intervened to protect a new girl, Meredith, from being bullied. Meredith had a difficult past, having lived with a mother who was addicted to drugs. She was very thin, scared, and would jump at the slightest noise. After her mother died of an overdose, Meredith was too afraid to call for help and ended up in the orphanage. Amanda and Anna Marie kept the reason for their presence a secret, brushing it off when Meredith asked about it with a fabricated story about a policeman father who died in the line of duty. However, the truth eventually emerged that their father was not a deceased police officer, but a living criminal serving time in prison for violent sexual crimes against a young girl. This revelation made their lives a living hell. Luckily, the sisters soon got a second chance when two separate families adopted them almost simultaneously, allowing them to start anew. Unfortunately, this meant they would be separated and lose touch with each other. There is no information available about the sisters' experiences in their foster homes. What is known is that Amanda, 29 at the time, met her future husband, John McGuire, now 38. Her adoptive parents had worried that Amanda would remain single forever, given her lack of biological family and the emotional trauma of her mother's betrayal. Larry McClure, the father, was released on parole and returned to Virginia, where he lived in a mobile home. He was determined to reconnect with his daughters. First, he visited Amanda's foster parents, Guam and Alex, and introduced himself, asking to see Amanda and requesting her contact information. At the time, Larry was dishonest about Anna Marie's whereabouts, claiming she lived in North Carolina, 186 miles away, when in fact, he had never seen or spoken to her. Despite this, Larry was able to meet with Amanda, and their reunions eventually led to him introducing her and her friend John to illegal drugs that he manufactured in his camper. The tragic events unfolded on Valentine's Day. John, who was still recovering from the effects of drug abuse and was deeply in love with Amanda, decided to surprise her with a romantic evening at home. However, during the meal, John's affectionate words to Amanda made Larry extremely anxious, causing tension to build. Larry stopped his son-in-law John from speaking and asked if he could be completely honest with his wife Amanda. John agreed, and Larry suggested a game. John's legs were tied, and he was asked to answer all questions about his life truthfully. At first, the questions were harmless, but as Larry became more intoxicated, he started accusing John of being an undercover FBI agent. 3 weeks later, Larry and Amanda got married. To keep their relationship a secret, Larry changed his name. The new family decided to start fresh in Kentucky, vowing to quit illegal substances for good. To blend in with their neighbors, they even hung a U.S. flag on their rented house's door. By 2019, John's family, including his ex-wife and parents, had become worried because they hadn't heard from him. John's mother even went so far as to file a missing person report with the police. Meanwhile, Larry was in trouble with the law again. He had failed to notify the authorities that he had moved to a different state, which violated the terms of his probation. As a result, he was sent back to prison. Larry's mental state had deteriorated significantly due to his long history of substance abuse and mixing drugs with alcohol. Suddenly finding himself in a place where he couldn't access these substances triggered withdrawal symptoms, including increased anxiety and a blurred sense of reality. It's likely that this led him to make irrational decisions, such as marrying his own daughter. Larry became convinced that the real reason for his parole violation was to search for John's body, which he believed was buried in his backyard. He urgently needed to get a message to his daughters, Plaudard, Amanda, or Anna Marie, to dig up the body parts and rebury them in a different location. However, all prison calls are monitored, so he had to find a way to convey this information discreetly. Larry meticulously prepared a speech, considering every detail, but was prohibited from making any phone calls. Despite this, he eventually couldn't resist and confessed to the duty officer, although his intentions remain unclear. Larry's reasoning was that if he confessed to the murder before being charged, he might avoid the death penalty, and if he implicated his daughters, that would be even better. However, the officer was initially skeptical, wondering what Larry was talking about. Why would this addict incriminate himself? Nevertheless, the officer was required by law to investigate Larry's claims. Initially, the officer intended to perform a cursory verification, simply confirming that a statement had been made and the alleged crime scene had been checked, but finding nothing. However, it was discovered that John was indeed missing, and as a precaution, a police unit was sent to Larry's residence. Upon searching the area, they found traces of lime, just as Larry had mentioned, and soon every aspect of his confession was corroborated. The McClure sisters were promptly apprehended. Amanda and Anna Marie were stunned when their father and husband, Larry, confessed to a brutal murder. Their shock turned to disbelief when Larry tried to shift the blame, testifying that his daughters were responsible for the crime, and he was an unwitting participant. As the family's story unraveled, each member attempted to distance themselves from the crime, claiming it was an accident. John's relatives were especially grief-stricken, as they had to come to terms with the fact that his body was never found, only remains. These remains had to be retrieved from forensic experts and transported to his parents for burial in a closed coffin. Despite the challenges, John's parents were able to lay him to rest, thanks to the help of friends who contributed financially, assisted with transportation, and made funeral arrangements. John was finally laid to rest at a Lutheran church on October 25, 2019. On February 15th, the day after Valentine's Day, a member of the McClure family posted a message on John's Facebook page, pretending it was from him. The message said he was going on a trip and would be out of touch for a long time, and asked his friends not to worry about his extended absence. This was a tactic to mislead everyone, as the family knew they were about to kill John and didn't want to arouse suspicion. Despite the heinous nature of their crime, during the trial, Larry and Amanda received an additional 6 months in their sentence due to their incestuous marriage, which is illegal in their state. The trial began, and Larry was given the floor. He stated that he had felt remorse for his own children for most of his life. He admitted that when they were very young, he had committed a serious crime that put them in an orphanage. He explained that their birth mother had abandoned them, and he was the only one who had a heartache for his little ones. He expressed his extreme gratitude to the people who had adopted his babies. He said he would not hide, and even attended churches and prayed for their adoptive parents when he got out. He confessed that he had crazily wanted to make up for all the years he had missed. He confessed that he could have walked away from the crime if he had convinced Amanda not to do it, but he didn't. He admitted that the judge and jury would probably not understand him, and he shared their point of view, but emphasized that they weren't in his shoes. He mentioned that John was a fine young man and expressed his regret for John. He stated that if he could, he would turn things around, but no one could raise the dead, and he couldn't say no to Amanda, his favorite and youngest daughter, who didn't care about John. All Amanda wanted was to be able to withdraw government money from John's account. The trial went on for a very long time, as the defendants flip-flopped back and forth on the decision to kill John. Amanda, who could not tolerate such a long trial, even made a deal with the investigators where she was promised to be charged with involuntary manslaughter at the next trial. Larry had given a very different speech when it all started, stating that the four of them had bought the ingredients to make illegal substances and went back to his trailer where he had started making them. Amanda had come up to him and said she wanted to get back at John. He explained that John, under the influence of drugs, had raped Anna Marie, who then got pregnant, and that he had to earn the trust of his daughters after all those years apart, so he couldn't refuse. Larry blamed himself for that and thought every day that he should hang himself, but questioned why it should be him if the crime was their fault. After Larry's speech, John's family got the floor. His mother sobbed non-stop, so much so that she couldn't say a word. She expressed that even if she could ever forgive the McClure family, she would never be able to forget what happened. She also conveyed that she wished she could live to see the day when one of them died before her. John's children were given a chance to speak, and they vehemently cursed the killers, declaring that they would never forgive them. The judge then delivered the final verdict, sentencing Larry McClure to life in prison without parole. When Amanda's punishment was announced, her adoptive parents were filled with regret, revealing to her that her biological father had been searching for her. They had raised her to have freedom of choice, but unaware that this freedom could have such severe consequences on her future. Amanda, however, shifted the blame to her biological father, claiming that his jealousy had driven her to commit the crime. Her adoptive parents pleaded with the judge to consider the negative influence of her biological father, arguing that their adopted daughter would not have committed such a brutal crime without it. Nevertheless, the prosecutors viewed the murder as a premeditated conspiracy, orchestrated so that Amanda and Larry could be together as a couple. The first hearing focused on Amanda, who received a 40-year sentence. However, the judge predicted she would likely serve only 20 years. During Anna Marie's hearing, she attempted to demonstrate her opposition to John's murder, but felt coerced by her father and sister to see it through. She only attended Larry and Amanda's wedding out of fear for her own future. Ultimately, Anna Marie was sentenced to 40 years in prison.